2028 is coming to a close, and we are going to talk just a little bit more about the NAIA football season here on Midwest Sports Net. I'm Joey. Thanks for being along for the ride with me tonight, and feel free to join in. That would be a lot of fun. Love to get to visit with some of you all tonight, especially those of you who are regulars in the live chat. Well, please let me know from where you're watching tonight. If you're new to the channel, thanks for tuning in. This is where we talk about small college sports and more throughout the Midwest and beyond. Keiser Seahawks, they are the national champions for 2023. What a fantastic season for the Seahawks. And you know, it's one of those things you look back and picking who I thought might win the championship game. It was 51-49 for me all week long. Went back and forth on that. Keiser, well deserving of a national championship. And hey, Michael, thanks for watching tonight. Thanks for being on board. We'd love to get to hear some of your comments tonight as well. So feel free to be along for the ride as we talk about the NAIA football season and we wrap it up. Okay, so we have Keiser with a national championship. Again, well-deserved, having lost to just one NAIA team in the last 2 years. That, of course, was in the national championship game last season. And just a great year. And you talk about it where we talked about the fact that here on Midwest Sports Net, we gave Coach of the Year honors to Coach Doug Sosha from Keiser. Again, the Coach of the Year in the Sun Conference in 2019, 2020, 2022, 2023. Top special teams player in the country went to Wendell Floor Jr. for what he did. And, you know, even though we gave our top honor to Rontavious Farmer in the running back category, I think there's a lot that could be said for what Jaden Meisinger did over the course of the year, Andrew Burnett as the season went along, and so many other great players on this team. So anyway, Keiser 2023 national champions. What do you think about that? Tell me who your top team was for the year. If it wasn't Keiser, and by the way, if it wasn't, who would it be? I mean, even Northwestern fell to Keiser, and Northwestern came in with 27 consecutive wins. So let's talk about the Red Raiders for a moment. Coach Matt McCarty's team playing in the national championship for three times in a 4-year stretch. I think there's a lot to be said for the Red Raiders and what they did. Jalen Gramstead, who was not only the player of the year this year, I think a lot could be said for him being the player of the year in 2022, not to take away from Joe Dolanchek, not even in the slightest. But for what Gramstead did, and really, he reinvented himself, at least on the college level. I never had a chance to see him play on the high school level, but when he took over as quarterback, he'd been playing on the defensive side of the ball for Coach McCarty, takes over not really midway through the season last year, let's say after about a third of the season as the starting quarterback, could easily be listed as a running quarterback, one of those dual threats, which he was really this year as well, but still more so, at least statistically in 2022, really reinvented himself on the field in 2023 and showed what he could do as a passing quarterback, leading the team in the way that he did. And, well, there you go. I think with what Gramstead did, Cody Mosier leading the NAIA in interceptions with 10 of those in 2023, so much can be said for what Northwestern did on the field. I think if you're looking at any team out there and saying, yeah, there might be a team up there near the top, I think Northwestern, you don't have to look too much farther than them. But again, national champions. And I think the symmetry that was displayed in the final scores for these two teams. You have a rematch. You have the same two teams playing for the national championship in 22 and in 23. 35-25 the win for Northwestern, 31-21 the win for Keiser on the other side of the ball. Each team winning by 10 points. What more can you say about that? I think these two teams are right up there at the top. And Michael, yeah, each of those mentioned, they were great. Keiser, a fantastic season. I will give a shout out, by the way, to Wyatt Brooks on the show tonight too, because, hey, I can. And to the entire Keiser team, congratulations for that season. Jake, good to see you on board tonight. Thanks for stopping by. I know there's probably still a lot going on, even on a December 28th, Thursday night, but appreciate you stopping by tonight. And again, everyone feel free, again, let us know from where you're watching, but also, even if you're watching this on the replay, tell us a few things that you think about the season. Now, a couple of these things we've mentioned before, and I just wanted to go down the list and wrap it up a little bit with looking ahead just slightly. Conferences this season, we've talked about this. I will say this again. GPAC, I think, is at the top of that list. The Great Plains Athletic Conference. You have Northwestern, the now national runner-up, coming off a national championship, followed by or preceded by a national championship from Morningside, preceded by a national runner-up finish by Northwestern, preceded by 2 national championships for Morningside. Yeah, I think the GPAC has gone a long way to show itself, and being probably at this point in 2023, the Premier League in the NAIA once again this year. Let's talk about the defenders from Dort and what they did on the field. Defense leading the way, getting them into the playoffs, and making the GPAC a 3-team league in this expanded playoff setup. A lot to be said there. I think you have a lot. You can go a long way with what Dakota Wesleyan did this season. Let's look at what Midland has been doing. Let's talk about the Concordia Bulldogs for a little while. I mean, every one of those teams in the GPAC, it really is. It's obviously it's a top-heavy league, but there's a lot to be said for the other programs, even in that mid-range, that you would say, hey, listen, I would think the GPAC would be more than willing to put teams 4, 5, and 6 up against teams probably even 3, 4, and 5 in most every other league in the NAI. So a lot to be said there. And there'll be some new teams that come along in 2024. We'll see how that goes. Jake, of course, watching from East Wichita. No surprise there, too. As a matter of fact, Jake, my family and I were just talking about Wichita just today, and some folks talking about, oh, well, I was visiting with one of the businesses in town. We were looking some things up. Wichita State came around. I said, you know what? I'm meeting some nice folks in Wichita. That's a great place to go. I will be back doing a show again, and my family and I were talking about that. We know there's going to be at least 2 shows in the state of Kansas in 2024, and Wichita is going to be one of those sites. So looking forward to doing Midwest Sports Saturday again from a football field. However, Midwest Sports Saturday takes to this YouTube channel once again in January, and we've got a couple of things to announce about January as we get to the end of the program. All right, Frontier, the Frontier Conference, and I did not think the Frontier Conference was as good as it turned out to be, especially midway through the year, and there were other people who were talking about the Frontier Conference, and I'll say, look, that was not me. I would go ahead and say by the end of the year, definitely one of those top-tier conferences, top 2 if you would, getting 3 teams into the playoffs. Not how I would have set it up. I've already said my piece on that, but you get 3 teams in there and the Frontier Conference, which is going to look different. It's going to look a little bit different in upcoming years. We've already talked about the news about Dickinson State coming in 24-25. Now that is it 24-25? I think, or is it 25-26? Yeah, it's 25-26 when Dickinson State comes in. That's after one more season of North Star play. And when Dickinson State leaves and when Jamestown moves from the GPAC into the North Star for next season before it makes its way into Division II, then you could be looking at the demise of a conference. That's very likely the case. And I think that the Frontier Conference is not through expanding. And again, this goes beyond football. If you want to look at this, let's talk about this for just a moment, that the Frontier Conference, it's a smaller conference in all sports. In football, you're taking teams from the Cascade, you're taking a team from the Golden State Athletic Conference, and you're going to get Simpson next year. So I think you're talking about a lot of changes coming up for the Frontier. It's going to go a long way for them to be able to schedule a little bit better, and I think that will help everyone a lot. But Frontier Conference is right up there. And I think the other conference, and Michael, and you know what? I'll pitch that up there. Yes, Jake, we're totally coming to Wichita, and I'm totally getting some pregame tailgating. That's for sure. Dort, the one team glad Kaiser didn't have to play during the playoffs. I think you're probably right. And even defending champions held the defending champions at that point in time to just 7 points on the field. It was the offense that was there, and that's almost, I would say, it's very similar to another team from the state of Iowa. If you're a Hawkeyes fan, and you're a Dort fan, then you were suffering watching offense this year. I'm just kidding. Dort could put points on the board. If you were a Hawkeyes fan, that just wasn't happening. Sorry, it just wasn't going to be there. Sun Conference. The Sun Conference was, I would say, I had the Mid-South up there, but as the playoffs went along, and really as I kind of looked through things, I would say the Sun Conference is probably number 3. Now here's my take on that. Obviously, national champion in Kaiser. You look at what St. Thomas did, and finally making the playoffs this year. I know it's an expanded playoffs, but they made the playoffs. They got there, totally deserving of a trip to the playoffs, and totally not deserving to have to play Kaiser in the playoffs. I know the rules. Let's just pause for a moment while I take a breath. No cough drops tonight, too. And I was looking back over the year. I went through so many cough drops on this show during football season. No cough drops tonight. I'm just going to take a breath, and I'll look here at the watch, make sure that the heart rate is, the heart rate has gone up just a little bit. But let's talk for a moment. St. Thomas should not have had to play Kaiser as early as the Bobcats had to play the Seahawks. Shouldn't have happened that way. And it's the way that the national championship playoff series works. This football national championship series works. I get it. But St. Thomas deserved to get to play somebody else first along the way. Or they did get somebody first. They should have played somebody besides Kaiser to meet them when they did. That was a point of frustration for me. And I would even go so far as to say, look, this happens on the basketball court, and this is where it shouldn't happen. I get it in football. They're playing. You're going on the road, 800 to 850-mile rule. You want to keep it down. You want to keep the money down, and I'm all for that. I understand the reasoning behind it. But sometimes the NAIA does this in basketball. You're playing in a neutral court in Kansas City, and there are times that teams from the same state will play each other, even if they're different conferences, will play each other from the same state in the first round of the NAIA basketball tournament. There's no 850-mile rule there, but you're eliminating fans from a state's fan base to cheer on a team. How much more invested would fans from, we'll just pick Oklahoma because, of course, we're based right here, be invested in a game, in a tournament, if, say, Langston and Oklahoma Wesleyan don't play each other in the first round? Very unlikely to happen this year. I get it. They're top 5 teams. But consider the point. And when it happens, when teams like that play each other, you're losing part of your fan base that could potentially be cheering all the way through to a quarterfinal game, a Fab Four game. But you've got them playing against each other in the first round. So I digress, and we'll go back to football. Bottom line, let's get some comments here. Jake, we're going to talk about this near the end of the program. So the bottom line, if you're not recognized early as a top 25 team and you surge late, is there no hope to make the playoffs? As the selection goes right now, Jake, I think there's very little hope to make the playoffs. I really do. It's unlikely. And you've got Mid-America Nazarene, and I know who you have, but they were a good team all the way through. Friends was good from start to finish. Friends had 2 losses. And we've talked about this here before. I know that Coach Harrison's not going to blame everything on some fumbles, but we can do that here because we just comment. Yeah, there were some fumbles, and it cost them 2 games, and they'd been in the playoffs. They were good start to finish. You take a team like Mid-America Nazarene, loses to Grandview early on, have that 1 loss on their schedule, still play all the way through, a classic game in the season finale, but it wasn't enough. Make top 25, but it wasn't enough. So, no, I don't know that there's a lot of hope there in that. Sorry. And Michael, yes, thank you for agreeing on that. I appreciate that because they didn't. They should not have played each other in that first round. But who else is gonna be there? And so anyway, I realize they're limited to what they have, and that's all they can do. Hey, shout out to Jake, by the way. Jake, thanks for friend of the channel. I need to come up with a new name because friend of the channel, I don't think just does enough justice. So I appreciate that very much. Let's leave that up there. Top 3 conferences, going back to that though, top 3 conferences, by far the Great Plains Conference is at the top, Frontier is right up there this year, and I have to give number 3 to the Sun Conference. Let's talk about a couple of other conferences that have to win. The KCAC has to win a playoff game. The KCAC has to win a playoff game, and it was just how frustrating was that for Evangel to go undefeated and go on the road. It was brutal, but the recognition wasn't there. And Jake, to your point, then let's say it again. Evangel went undefeated, so we're talking start to middle to finish of the year, and still had to play a road playoff game. And the biggest reason for that was as Corey mentioned on the show here the other day, poll inertia, which is a real thing, and it frustrates me. We'll look at the final regular season rankings, not ratings, here in just a moment, but that's the case. By the way, and I'll drop this on you. I know I've been promising a video from this for so long, and I just have to do it to live up to my word. But there has to be a video about the difference in rankings and ratings. And if it were true ratings, let's go back to that. If it were truly a rating system, and James talked about this, that the Champion Sports Network is looking into a rating system for basketball. If it were true ratings, and they took their top 25 from the ratings that they did, instead of putting together a bunch of people ranking teams, that's what this is. It's a bunch of people that are ranking teams. There's not ratings. They're getting ratings from it, but they're initially ranking the teams. Semantics, I understand, but that's just part of it. If there were true ratings, Jake, Evangel would not have been playing on the road in the second round or their first game, which was their first game, second round of the playoffs. So let's check the heart rate again. It's gone up a little bit, but okay, there we go. All right. The KCAC has to win a playoff game. Just have to win a playoff game. And that's there. The Sooner Athletic Conference has to win a playoff game. And when we talk about some teams a little bit later on, we'll discuss this again, but they just have to win one to get that cred, for lack of a better word. I know that's coming from a it's coming from a South Park episode right now too. I haven't seen South Park, but it's coming from that South Park episode. So there we go. Let's see here. A lot of times the phrase is used. That's the way the mop flops. You may now, Michael, I know you're a little bit older than I am. I haven't heard that one. That's new to me. I don't know. Is that regional? Is that something out in Florida? So there we go. All right. Let's throw that up there. Yes, please support this channel. And we are trying to get these kids some recognition. No doubt. We're definitely trying to get these kids some recognition. We're going to do that on through into 2024. Programming note really quickly, by the way, if you're watching live tonight, please let us know in the live chat from where you are watching. We always like to hear that. If you're watching us, even the replay, let us know in the comment section. It's always fun to get to read those after the fact, and I appreciate you watching tonight. Be a part of the channel, and we would love that. We will be doing more in 2024. I know that the football portion of our shows will not come to an end, but we're going to get a few more things on some basketball and baseball and softball. I have a really cool guest coming up in the first part of January on the summit, and I know there are a couple more who have said they will be on, so we should have some fun people to talk to, talking about small college sports and more throughout the Midwest and beyond. And by the way, the term Midwest Sports Net, just to let you in on that, I am based here in Oklahoma. There's a lot that's gone on with websites over the years, and decided to name the YouTube channel with following MidwestSports.net to name the channel Midwest Sports Net, right here around a bunch of Southwest and Midwest teams that I'd been covering for a long time in Division II and the NAIA. We've grown, we've expanded. I mean, we got folks. Michael's in Florida, I know, and there are other folks in other parts of the country. Now, Jake's just up the road from me here, a little ways north in this portion of the country. But I didn't want to lose the name, and I think someday we've been talking about Emerald Quest because that is actually the overarching business name for which all of my businesses are under that heading, Emerald Quest. And someday we may talk about that as a name, but boy, once you get something out there, you don't want to lose it. So But we go beyond just the Midwest right here on this channel. KCAC has to win. Has to win. You've got to get that done. And it's the only way to get some credibility. I realize Kansas Wesleyan had that win over Indiana Wesleyan a couple of years ago. That was a forfeit. We all know it. The committee knows it. The American people know it. So they got to get a win on the field. And Evangel, I really thought was going to be able to get it done, and just didn't happen. So there we go. Stuart, Florida, about 25 miles north of Kaiser, there, West Palm Beach. Okay, it's chilly tonight where I am in southeastern Oklahoma. I would imagine pretty chilly where Jake is. I don't know where everyone else is watching from tonight, but Michael, you got to tell me, is it chilly where you are? I'll bet it's not. We wrap up this year. Let's move on. Sooner Athletic Conference has to win, and we'll talk about that. Some of my favorite parts of my wow, that was very Southern. Gift from my brother-in-law, who is a huge Oklahoma fan, OU fan. They're playing right now. But this was for Christmas because I am an OSU alum. And a shout out, by the way, to the Cowboys who get the bowl win. And also a win in Bedlam this year. Just going to throw that out there. 70 degrees in Stuart, Florida. Well, enjoy that. We're enjoying about 35 right now. So we got about half that here in southeastern Oklahoma. Okay, one of my favorite parts of the season. Let me know some of your favorite parts of the season as well. I'd love to see that in the live chat tonight as well. Joaquin Collazo III had an 8-touchdown game. This was back midway through the year, playing at Faulkner, threw 8 touchdowns in that contest. Now, Collazo was just great over the course of the season, had multiple touchdown games. As a matter of fact, the last 11 games of 13 games for Bethel this year for the Wildcats, Collazo had in his last 11 multiple touchdowns thrown, and 8 against Faulkner on the road, by the way, at Faulkner. Now, he did have an interception that game, and usually when we do our top 5, we kind of count off a little bit if you had 4 or 5 touchdowns thrown, but if you had a couple of interceptions, we may not put you in that final 5 in our top 5 performances. There was no way we were going to leave Collazo out for just one pick. Throwing it left and right, 8 touchdown passes in that one. And another great quarterback I enjoyed as the season went on, especially. And poor Pikeville. Pikeville had that overtime loss to Reinhardt. And Reinhardt, by the way, at one point of the season just never looked back. Just the Eagles just went on a roll, tore through everyone until, of course, they got to the playoffs. And Pikeville, one of those wins for Reinhardt, Kirkland just lit it up. And again, his last 6 games, he was responsible for at least 4 touchdowns a game in each of his last 6 games. And the touchdown passes thrown, 6, 3, 4, 4, 5, and 7 in the season finale against St. Andrews. What an incredible way to end a season. I mean, from the midpoint on, it was all Lee Kirkland all the time for the Bears. And it's going to be interesting to see what Pikeville does coming into 2024. Kirkland with 7 touchdown passes in a game, topped only by what Collazo did in that game for Bethel. So that was one of my favorite points of the year. I think another big one for me was the fact that Jaden Meisinger got 261 rushing yards in the championship game. And he had some big rushing games over the season. He was in the top 3 pretty much the whole year long in what he did, moving the ball. Kaiser, a great running team, had Meisinger. Burnett came along midway through. We've talked about that so much. But the fact that Meisinger had his career high in the national championship, there's so much to be said for that. And again, I've mentioned it before. You get a national championship, nobody can take that away from you. And that is so cool for him. But the fact that he was able to he saved his best for last. And what an effort to do that. Game opening touchdown, 75 yards, never looked back from that point. I think that was one of my favorite points of the year. How about Ottawa, Arizona? And Vince, I thought Vince might be on the program with me tonight. Vince Delicio, who hails from Phoenix, Arizona, a place that's not that far from Arizona Christian, not that far from Ottawa, Arizona. He's a big fan of both those programs. And OUAZ, 8-1 on the year. Should they have made the playoffs? Again, yes, so much to be said for what OUAZ did. Another one of those teams that has a legitimate statement to be in the playoffs. Unless the Sooner Athletic Conference gets a win, they're going to be on the outside looking in. But I still would have had OUAZ, Friends, and Mid-American Nazarene in front of Montana Tech. I'm probably not making any friends in Montana Tech, and I'm sorry. I think you have a great program. Love the Ore Diggers. Fantastic program. Coach from all the way down, from your coach to your broadcast, your radio broadcast is fantastic. But still would have had those teams in there. OUAZ, in 2 of their last 4 games, scored at least 83 points against and it was just a beatdown. But against Arkansas Baptist, this was at home, 83-0 against the Buffaloes. Just absolutely tore them apart. And then the season finale, 89-20 against Oklahoma Panhandle State. 2 of your last 4 games, you put at least 83 points on the board. They were by far the leading scoring team in the country, and they were on the outside looking in. So OUAZ will come into 2024 with a 7-game win streak. A 7-game win streak. And that was just, that was nice. Career high, as Meisinger was just a bulldozer, and he absolutely was a bulldozer in that game. He was a bulldozer all year long, but he was a bulldozer in that game. And those guys are fun to watch. They really are. I know it's not, sometimes it's not as, the highlights aren't as big as you get one of those long passes down the field and there's somebody just weaving their way in and out. But I mean, you see the people that, when they get the ball, they're going to have like at least 5 yards, probably 10, and who knows, might open up a national championship game with a 75-yard run. All right, best memory. Here we go. I'll pause for mine for just a moment. Beth's memory, and Jake says, blowing snow, 31 degrees, wet, miserable conditions at North Newton that had a 3-hour delay of the game that was called midway through the third quarter. And Friends won that game by about 173 points on top of that, too. Absolutely destroyed Bethel in that game. I thought that Friends was going to win. Didn't see the weather coming. The weather was an absolute, I saw what we were seeing here and what I was watching elsewhere was pretty rough, but I know what you had to live through in that. And the last time I was up at Wichita, you all were playing Bethel, and it was cold and midway through September. But that one was a fun one, I'm sure, for you. And boy, again, there was your statement game that if everything works out, that win was enough to get them into the playoffs. I'm sorry, it just didn't work out that way. But anyway, best memory. Somebody else have a best memory from 2023? Let me know in the live chat. We would love to see that. All right, let's keep pushing on here. Another highlight of 2023. How about the fact that Morningside pushed its regular season win streak up to 75? Now, it eventually ended. It did end here in 2023. But the Mustangs have just done so well on the field. 75 consecutive wins. Now, I live in a state where the Oklahoma Sooners have the Division I overall win streak record, which, by the way, was now no longer in any danger because of what Alabama did to Georgia in the SEC championship game. That's neither here nor there right now. But Morningside won 75 consecutive during the regular season. And Grandview, by the way, Grandview has its regular season win streak up to 50 now. And I realize it coincides with their conference win streak as well, because they've just been playing conference games the whole time. But be on the lookout for Grandview next year, because could easily get that win streak. And I say easily. We'll talk about a couple of teams along the way. But could get that win streak up to 61 at the end of 2024. I know there's a lot that has to be said and done between now and then, but just something to think about. But that to me, those were cool numbers. Those were absolutely cool numbers in that. All right, Michael's favorite game or favorite moment or favorite memory of 2023, the Kaiser College of Idaho game. That was a big time. Well, and he goes on to say next to the national championship game as well. The Kaiser College of Idaho game, that was a big one. And the way that Kaiser on defense. Again, this is not something people talk about all the time, the defense, because, I know offense wins games and defense wins championships, but I have to go back to what I was, I used to hear this back in the 90s, chicks dig the long ball. And so, of course, that's a baseball reference, but still, offense is what people, they want to see. And that Kaiser defense that just flat bowed up against John Schofield and Andy Peters and that College of Idaho offense there in that semifinal, that was something. That was really, really something. So anyway, a lot to be said for that one. Yeah, that's a good memory. I like that one. Panel accepts that one. How about Demetrius Gilbert? Want to talk about game openers for what Meisinger did? Demetrius Gilbert for Bethel, here's another Bethel reference, had 2 pick sixes in the season opener. And they went on to just beat down Point. But Gilbert set the pace for the year on defense. And I mentioned a little earlier that Collazo had multiple touchdown passes in the final 11 games of the season. The first 2 games, he didn't have it. The second game of the season at least had a touchdown pass. But in the first game of the season, he didn't have any touchdown passes. That was when Gilbert ran back 2 pick sixes. So I guess he didn't need to have a touchdown pass in that game. They still won by like close to 40 points. So, anyway, that's all right. Here's one. Watch out for this. Cade Ross for Grandview, Graceland. Cade Ross, the sophomore quarterback for Graceland, was the co-offensive player of the year in the Heart North. He didn't play in one of the games, and he didn't have all of his weapons at his disposal. Last year, he got recognition for being the offensive player of the year as a freshman, and he didn't play in half of the games. Cade Ross is a force to be reckoned with, and when he has all of his weapons at his disposal, he can do some pretty big things. And from what I'm reading on Twitter, I'm just not ready to call it X, but from what I'm reading on Twitter, Monroe's coming back to Graceland next year. And that could be big. So let's consider that. Cade Ross coming back. Gerald Monroe coming back. Key parts for Coach Ross's team. Graceland could be a huge force to be reckoned with. But here's what they need to do. They're going to have to keep everyone in line all the way through and understand that people are gunning for them. That's what they are just going to have to keep in mind the whole time. And throughout the summer and throughout camp and throughout everything else, that they take as their motto that they're going to be the model of a modern major general. Let's go Pirates of Penzance here. They have to be the model of a modern major general, uptight all the way through, and don't let anyone get under the skin. And if that works out, then we very likely can and will be talking about Graceland in the playoffs in 2024. Just something to consider. Graceland won the first 3 games, lost 5, then won the final 3. Very symmetrical season. Finished the season 6-5. And I'll tell you what I do. And some people didn't see all the Graceland stuff, but there were a number of players that had to sit out because things got out of hand in one of the games, and there were a little bit of what they call extracurricular activity. And I think if I were Graceland, and I'm not, but if and I were, I would have a GA or some other student worker and put a camera on him, give him a camera, get him in the stands every single game, and have that camera focused on Gerald Monroe the entire and about a 5 to 10 yard radius around him the entire time, and document everything that comes down the pike, and don't let anyone be able to say anything one way or the other, and keep and Gerald, be on your best behavior all the way through, and just be able to and let people know we're watching everything that goes on. And if you want to cause frustration or try to get people out of the game for whatever reason, we're going to document it. Michael, I'm sure you'd remember this. Jake, you're old enough to remember this too. I remember watching the Lakers in the late 70s and in the early 80s. And there was a he was one of the most fun players to watch. If you remember watching the Los Angeles Lakers in the late 70s, early 80s with a guy named Kurt Rambis. Kurt Rambis's sole purpose in the game was to go in and foul somebody. I mean, it's not that he didn't know how to play basketball. He knew how to play basketball, but he would take those broken glasses and strap them on his head, and he would go in there, and when they needed to, he'd foul somebody. Now, granted, it's not going to happen in the NBA today because no one's going to, I mean, the rules are different, and everybody, it's a lot different than it was back in the 70s and 80s where, you know, it was basically a brawl on the court every single game. But that was Rambis's job. He was there to go in there and foul somebody and get under someone's skin. And the way to get around it, you couldn't let him get under your skin. And I would just say, you can't let anybody get under your skin. You just can't. So I think Graceland can be a playoff team next year. And if everything works out and you're not looking at a third season with Ross and Moreau not getting to spend the whole time on the field together, if they're on the field together the entire time, you are so very likely looking at a playoff team in the Yellow Jackets. So mark that one down. Yeah, Rambis was a wild man. Rambis, he was so much fun to watch. My dad, I enjoyed watching when Dad was watching, and I was a much, you know, I was a wee little Joey at the time. But yeah, when Dad was watching and Kurt Rambis would come in, he'd smile because he knew what was going to happen. So that was always a lot of fun. All right, one more thing. Let's go. Okay, let's go. Two more things. We'll close this out. And I definitely want this. Hopefully, will make Jake happy because I actually have this in here for a reason. Jake, I think you'll like a stat coming up. First one. Adrian Parsons to Arlandis Mitchell. Man, I'm sorry. Maybe I do need a cough drop tonight. Or maybe I'm just showing off the OSU. I don't know. Adrian Parsons to Arlandis Mitchell. Not once, not twice, but 3 times set program long touchdowns for Mid-American Nazarene. Tied a program long with a 90-yard touchdown pass. The next week was a 92-yard touchdown pass. And the final week of the season was a 98-yard touchdown pass. They're running out of room. But that was fun. That was fun to get to talk about that week after week after week. That was one of my favorite parts of 2022. And finally, Friends. That was so much fun to talk about the ground game for Friends. 4,611 rushing yards for the season. And get this. This is an average of 419 rushing yards per game. To my knowledge, that is the highest average rushing per game for a team in the NAIA. Now, someone may pull some statistic way out of whatever orifice that proves me wrong, and I'm fine with that if you do. But to my knowledge, that's the highest. But Joey, can that win in the playoffs? Really? Can that win a national championship? And the answer to that is absolutely, definitively yes. Because it just happened in Division II, a team that I get to cover on a regular basis working with the Great American Conference, and I get to see Harding year in and year out. I saw Harding one time in person this year. They were the real deal when I watched them. They were up, I think, 28-0 after the coin toss. And, I mean, this is a run-oriented team that compiled 6,161 rushing yards in Division II this year, en route to a national championship, a win down in McKinney, Texas, an hour and 5 minutes from my house, and I didn't get to go, but I'm not bitter. But got the win. Now, that's an average of 410.7 yards per game. That's still 8 to 9 yards less than what Friends was putting up. It can win a national championship. You get everything in place. Now, granted, you can't fumble. Let me see if I can pull this back up here because I know I saw it. 5 fumbles away from a perfect season. Okay, Jake. And I get it, and you're right. You can't fumble the ball, which they didn't, and you do have to have a good defense. And Friends does have a good defense. And I think that it's really interesting to see that these teams that have these great running offenses, the ground games like this, the defense just seems to always be able to hold opponents' offenses ground game to next to nothing. And it makes then your opponents more one-dimensional because they've shut off the ground game, and now they're forced to throw the ball, which if they throw the ball well, it's give or take on that. But yes, could a run dominant team like Friends win a national championship? And the answer to that is yes. Absolutely. They can. And it's been proven this year, this month, even just less than a week ago. So there we go. All right. Has it been less than a week? Man, it's been about a week and a half. Sorry, it's been about a week and a half ago. That's right. All right, let's look at one more thing, and let me see if I can pull this up here, because I want to go back to something that was mentioned earlier. And Jake, actually, I think you were the one that mentioned that. Can a team that's not picked high early on be able to maybe have a late surge and find themselves in a playoff spot? And I submit to you, as it stands right now, and I'm not on the committee, and again, the committee did a good job this year. Things that I would have done differently if they'd asked me. Nobody in Kansas City's asking me anything. But if and they were, then I would probably have done things a little bit differently. Let me see if I can zoom in on this a little bit more and make this a little bit bigger so we can see those teams. Let's run through this just a bit here. And this is the final rankings, not ratings, of the regular season. And here are some of my teams to watch. And if you'll put these teams in the preseason rankings, not ratings, I will not back down on that. If you'll put these teams in the preseason rankings, not ratings, you may see these teams in the playoffs. If you leave them on the outside looking in, then it's going to be another struggle. And as we saw, Evangel comes in 11-0, still has to play on the road in its first playoff game. So there. All right. Kaiser, without question, Kaiser is the number one team in the country coming in. Now, Kaiser loses some key parts. They're going to have some seniors go away and grad students. And this is where, I mean, from a broadcasting standpoint, I'm ready for the COVID era to be gone, because it's really tough on looking ahead and doing anything preview-wise for the next year, because you don't know who's coming back. I mean, it may say senior by their name and the year before, and you think, okay, well, they're going to be gone. Well, no, actually, this guy redshirted his freshman year. Oh, and he has a COVID year too. So he actually has 2 more seasons of eligibility. Yeah, but you put senior. Well, that's what he is. Anyway, that's kind of tough. But let's go with Kaiser there to begin with. Kaiser, defending national champions coming in. Kaiser definitely needs to be a team to be thought of there. All right, let's make this a little bit bigger. How about that? All right, I'm going to go with Northwestern. Gramstad's coming back. Key points on defense coming back. Northwestern, I realize, well, Joey, these are teams, obviously, they're going to be near the top. You might think so, and yet I'm going to push for it. Northwestern should be up there. Anybody that's watching this right now, I encourage you to push for some of these teams to get up there. There's some teams that may or may not make it. These teams should be up there to the top. You look through that list. Kaiser, Georgetown, Marion, Indiana, Wesleyan, I think they're all going to be up there too. Here's another team. Morningside. Morningside is, I think that it was a blip on the radar this year. Offensively, there were some struggles. You're looking at back-to-back, shifting quarterback back and forth. I think Coach Ryan did not want to be without a quarterback that had experience this year, but I think that the offense was not on the same level it has been in the past, but they have the keys in place that they can have a good, strong offense. I think Morningside's a team that needs to be up there. Now let's talk about some teams that we haven't. It's going to take them being in the preseason to get them in there in the postseason. So here we go. Up there to the top, OUAZ finishes the season at number 13 in the country. OUAZ has a lot returning, and this is a team that I encourage anyone watching, Put OUAZ back in your top 15 to start the season. Put OUAZ in your top 12 to start the season. Get them up there. OUAZ may jump a team like St. Xavier. OUAZ may be up there on top of Dordt right off the bat. Fine. Get them up there. They're going to come in with 7 consecutive wins. Put this team in your top 15. Let's go get how. Okay, let's run down the list. Let's look some teams up there. St. Thomas needs to stick around. Where are we right here? Reinhardt, and I'm going to pitch Reinhardt and Pikeville as a package deal, and there's a reason for that. One of my kids coming home. I'm pitching Reinhardt and Pikeville as a package deal because the way the Appalachian looked this year, they're in that same category with the Sooner Athletic Conference and the KCAC. And I would even say maybe as a conference, they're worse because there is such a drop-off after Reinhardt and Pikeville that, I mean, even the Sooner Athletic Conference, you had 3 teams at the top because Louisiana Christian was a team that represented the Sooner Athletic Conference. That's leaving out Texas Wesleyan and OUAZ. You've got strong teams up there at the top. Langston, a very strong team that wasn't even in that mix. Very, very good team in Langston. What about the KCAC? Friends on the outside looking in. We'll get to Friends in a moment. You're Bethel on the outside looking in. You've got other teams there. Kansas Wesleyan on the outside looking in. They are all better teams than your 3, 4, 5, 6, and beyond in the Appalachian. Your only 2 possibilities next year, unless something huge happens, and we're going solely off this year, so please, when we do our previews, I'm not saying anything different, but Reinhardt and Pikeville, one of those needs to be up there, and Reinhardt is up there right now because they're likely to get only 1 team again, unless Pikeville goes completely undefeated other than the Reinhardt loss or vice versa. Now, shout out to everyone else in the Appalachian because everyone else can make that adjustment, but from this year, there was a drop-off. And so everyone's going to have to make some changes there. So I'm putting Pikeville in, but it's a package deal. Put one or both of those up there in the top 25 and let them get some recognition. Montana Western finished the season well, started the season low. This is a Bulldogs team that is that's led by a strong coach, and you've got a very good returning starting quarterback in Palandri. You've got Eli Norse, who we gave as our wide receiver of the year here a couple of nights ago. Montana Western is a team that needs to get up there in the preseason rankings and let them enjoy the benefits of doing well this year so that they can be thought of later on in the season. Let's just go with it. Let's talk about Friends for a moment. Let me see if I can pull this back up here and see how far down the list Friends was. Friends in at 23. Friends was 9-2 last year. The most dominant ground game in the country, and statistically, it was 4th all time in total rushing yards. You go back to a Reinhardt team in, I think, 2016 that had 5,000 rushing yards. Friends had only 4,611. Only 4,611. Dominated what it did the year before, and that year led the country in its ground game. Friends, 419 yards per game. This is a dominating ground attack. Friends needs to be not only in the top 25, but probably in the top 20. And I think there's an argument that could be made for them being higher than that. This is a preseason ranked team and should be. So cards and letters to all of your senators and representatives to try to get this done because Friends needs to be in there and get that poll inertia. Same thing with Mid-American Nazarene. Mid-American Nazarene jumped in at number 22 on the final poll there, 9-2, just like Friends, won their season finale against a very good Benedictine team in Atchison. This is a Mid-American Nazarene team that suffered a loss early on against Grandview and lost to a very good Baker team, by the way. And I'm glad to see, by the way, that Baker did, even at 8-2, Baker is on top of Mid-American Nazarene in the poll because they deserve to be there, because they did get the win over Mid-American Nazarene. I know there's a lot to be said there. Benedictine right down there too. 3-way tie in that Heart South. That is a brutal division. The Heart South it's very much stronger. It was stronger this year than the Hart North, I think, in a lot of ways, kind of like the Kessinger was over the Bissell and the KCAC. But get Mid-America Nazarene in there. Adrian Parsons coming back for one more season. This is a quarterback that can get the job done, an offense that can get the job done, and a defense that held on against Benedictine when it needed to. Yeah. Put Mid-America Nazarene in there. Who else do I have? Oh, a couple more. Well, Graceland. I don't see, and again, it's all what does it matter if it's preseason, right? Really? If the preseason doesn't mean anything, then what does it really matter? So put these teams in there, and let me pull this back out. Let's just talk for a moment. If it really doesn't matter, then let's do this. Graceland, put Graceland in the top 25. If Kate Ross is coming back and Gerald Monroe is coming back, and they're both coming back to Graceland next year, then Graceland, the Yellow Jackets, need to be a preseason top 25 team, because that's an offense that's going to dominate throughout all of 2024. It's going to be in the top 5 in passing. It's going to be in the top 5 in receiving. And it's going to be in the top 5 in passing touchdowns, yards per game. If those two players play the entire year and they stay healthy and they're out there, Graceland will be a tough opponent for Grandview in that Hart North. And if they happen to play somebody out of conference in the season opener, Graceland needs to be in the top 25. Okay. And finally, Evangel needs to stay in the top 15. Undefeated through the regular season, making some noise in its very, very tough Kessinger division. The Kessinger division will remain as it is for one more season. Then there will be some adjustments, and we'll see how it goes. The Kessinger, keep Evangel in the top 15. Put Friends up there. My goodness, give Bethel some recognition too along the way, because the Threshers deserve it. But put Evangel in that top 15 and let them be subject to poll inertia. They proved it this season. They deserve not only a playoff spot going undefeated, they deserved a home playoff game. Didn't get it. They need one next year if they're able to pull off what they did. And especially if Evangel gets a win over Friends again, which I know Jakes wouldn't dig that. But if that were the case, this is going to be a very, very tough Evangel team and should not have to fight coming back up. Now, Joey, you're running out of a lot of spots in the top 25. Absolutely, I am. I'm just pitching a lot of things out there and seeing if some of these people who are doing the rankings, not ratings, will get the bat off their shoulders collectively and take a swing at one of these teams that's good enough to be there. And I think they are. So, wow, I've been on the soapbox for a while. I'm not sure I've taken a breath for a while, and y'all are still watching. So thank you very much for that. That is it there. Any other teams? Did I miss any that need to be in the top 25? Is there somebody else out there who would say, hey, this team needs to be in the top 25? Let me know what you think about that. And by the way, Michael and Jake and everyone, thanks for watching as long as you all have tonight. Here's what we have. We may just get on, talk a little bit before the end of the year. I would love to get to visit with you all some more, one more time before the calendar terms. And let me know if there is something else that I missed that you all would want to talk about. Number 2, basketball is on the way. We're going to talk some basketball in January. And number 3, and not just basketball, but baseball and softball as well. Maybe even a little wrestling. We'll see if we get that in there. But we do need to talk some basketball because, my goodness, there's a lot of Division II and NAIA basketball that is worth our attention, and I think you all would enjoy that a lot. I know that there are a lot more folks that I'd like to talk to. Again, special summit coming up. First, second week. It'll be in the first 10 days of January, so we'll get to do that. And we will be, Midwest Sports Saturday, we'll be back out in a few of the gymnasiums around the area, at least within traveling distance of me right off the bat. I may have to save up some money so I can get to all the places that we need to get in, not only Kansas, but Missouri this year. And man, it'd be fun to take a trip to West Palm Beach one of these days. I know Mrs. Midwest Sportsnet is up for that anytime. She would definitely do that. My second daughter's husband is from Tampa. By the way, Michael, I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but he's from Tampa. So we've gone out there to visit his family a time or two, and that'd be a fun trip before. Last time I was there, I actually did a Midwest Sports Saturday from Lakeland. So that was a nice place to stop. And we made sure we got that through, and that was pretty cool. So anyway, all right. I don't think there's anything else. Jake, friend of the channel. Michael, friend of the channel. Thank you for watching tonight. Anybody else? Thank you very much for being a part of the broadcast. As I always say, if you've watched this long, thanks for being a part. If you are watching the replay and you are still with us, you are a trooper. You are absolutely a trooper, and I appreciate you being a part of all that we're doing here. So, going to sign off for this. If we get a chance to talk one more time live between now and the 30th or 31st, and there's just something that we can visit about, I may make something up so that we can, because I enjoy getting to visit with all of you. You make my time here a lot of fun, and I appreciate getting to do that. So, God bless you all. On another one of my channels, I always sign off by saying this, that you should be wise, walk in love, and do not walk in fear. And I wanted to bring that for you all tonight. So be wise, don't, and walk in love, and do not walk in fear. All right. And we are just about to wrap up 2023. So thanks for being a part of this with me tonight. God bless you all. Have a great evening.